and this is typical of moral injury, he had been
Yes.
keeping them at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole reason was, and he said this one night, I do not want to infect them with my evil. And then on the last week we were there, with tears in his eyes, he said, I've made a decision. I have decided I'm going to share everything with my wife. He had been terrified to do so because he was afraid that she would then begin to see him the way he sees himself, and that she would leave him. And the same for his children. And that thought absolutely terrified him.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SoulSense podcast with Samaritan's Well. We have another special guest today. It's Dr. Larry Brant. He has been a Navy chaplain for going on 17 years. He had 25 years of experience before that as a local minister. And he's got a brand new book we're excited to tell you about. It's called Restoring the Broken, a ministry leader's guide to understanding and healing moral injury. So welcome, Larry, to our podcast.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here.
So glad to have you. I know you told me when we were talking beforehand that your boss calls you Larry, but everyone else calls you Chaps. I love that.
That's pretty accurate.
I like that. Tell us a little bit about how you got into ministry initially and then made the transition to Navy chaplain.
Okay. Well, I grew up in the church. I was raised near St. Louis in a community called Cahokia and grew up in the church. My parents were very active in the church. And I really started getting involved in missions when I was a youth, went on several church youth mission trips. And God kind of used that to call me into ministry. At first as an associate pastor dealing with worship, youth, education, discipleship, was a music undergrad, Murray State University, go Racers.
Oh, there you go.
And then went to Southern Seminary for my master's in church music. And for the next 25 years was an associate pastor. And toward the end of that, at my final church was Southview Baptist Church in Lincoln, Nebraska. I was there, and we had some firefighters and police officers in the congregation. And one day after service, they approached me and they said, "We think you have the right temperament to be one of the volunteer chaplains for the city. Would you consider doing that?" So I prayed about it, and I felt led to do that. So I went to the senior pastor and I said, "Do you have any issue with that?" He was very supportive of it. And so then I began volunteering with the city of Lincoln, getting to the point where I was running the ministry for the city. I had about 30 volunteer chaplains that I supervised. Oh, wow. And it was really neat because I could walk into the office of the police chief, of the fire chief, of the mayor, and just say, "What's on your heart? How can I pray for you today?" And that was a wonderful privilege to be able to do that, and to be able to work with those first responders. And I think God was using that to call me to that next evolution in ministry. So in 2007, I found out that my denomination was having a chaplains conference in Hawaii. The exact week my wife had a fall break at her school, because my wife was a sign language interpreter for the school system. So I said, "Honey, it's of God that we go to this conference."
Yes.
Of course, as soon as I said the words Hawaii, she was on board.
She was in.
She was in. She was so in. So we went, and as we're there, we're meeting all of these military chaplains and hearing their stories and how God is just working through their ministry. And I began to feel this call toward military chaplaincy, but kind of like Moses at the burning bush, I was trying to tell God all the reasons why he was wrong.
Send somebody else.
Yeah. And, I thought I had 3 really good arguments. And then God proceeded to knock him down like a pro bowler. Uh,
Whoa.
the first one was I was already at that time over the age limit to come in. The
Okay.
very next session, they talked about how the Army and the Navy are in such need of chaplains, they're giving age waivers.
Oh my. Okay.
And so then I thought, well, I don't have the right master's degree because at that point I had two masters. I had a master of church music and I had a master of leadership. Um,
Mhm.
and again, the next session, they start talking about now, this was 2007, mind you, these brand new online seminaries that are fully accredited and that the military is accepting them. And I thought, wow,
Wow.
that was the second one. And then the third one, I thought I really had him on. That's
Mhm.
because at that point in my life, I was a pretty big boy. I weighed over 300 pounds.
Oh,
And,
wow. Okay.
and God said there's this thing called diet and exercise. So,
Oh, no. That was the hard one. Oh, no.
oh, yeah. So I said, okay, Lord, I will answer this, but I really need you to tell me my wife because I'm terrified to tell her this. Uh,
Yes.
here I am going to rock this poor woman's world.
Yep.
And so we go to the room that night because, whenever we go to a conference together, we go to the room and then we always just kind of share what God has laid on our hearts that day.
Mhm.
And so we're going back to the room, and that's the longest walk down that hallway ever because I'm just dreading this conversation because I'm not
Yeah.
sure how she's going to react. And we
Yeah.
we go into the room, and I close the door, and she turns around, puts her finger in my face, and said, "I think God's calling you to military chaplaincy." And I was like,
No way.
"Holy cow!" He really did tell her first. And so we sat up for quite a while that night talking about what all this would involve, what all I would have to go back to school. I
Yep.
would have to really start living a much healthier lifestyle,
Right.
um, losing weight. And I'll never forget, she said, if this is what God has called us to do, how could we do anything else?
Oh,
And I just
that's
thought
beautiful.
I thought to myself how I just do not deserve this woman. Um,
That's so precious.
so we came home and we started down the road. I went back
Okay.
to school online through Luther Rice
Okay.
Seminary in Lithonia, Georgia.
Okay. Okay.
And then that Christmas, she bought me hours with a personal trainer, or as I like to say, she paid a 22-year-old to try to kill me. Um,
Yes. Yes, I'm sure.
but I went to the young man and I showed him because I felt a special leaning toward the Navy because I like the variety of ministry the
Mhm.
Navy provides because you're working with
Mhm. Mhm.
the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. Navy
Sure.
chaplains bounce back and forth between the three.
Okay.
And so I took the height weight standards and the physical fitness standards, and I took them to the young man, and I said, this is the bare minimum of what I have to be able to do. And God
Wow.
bless that kid. He created a program and a plan to get me there. And a year and a half later, I had lost 110 pounds.
Oh my
And a
goodness.
little bit of it back. It's still, as we get older, that's a little
That's
hard.
amazing. That's
Uh,
amazing.
but so there I was at the age of 45 at the
Yeah.
MEP station in my underwear, duck walking with a bunch of 17-year-olds.
My
Uh,
goodness.
and then from there, um, I went. The first thing they did was send me to the Marine Corps
Okay.
as the person in the Navy who assigns you where you go is called the detailer. And as the detailer told me, he said, "Boy, I'm gonna send you to the Marines because if I send you any older, they just might kill you." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Okay, sir." And about a year after that, a little more than a year after that, I was in a fire hole in Afghanistan with an infantry battalion,
Wow.
and
Amazing.
uh, and you know, really, you know, ministry in combat, being outside of the wire the majority of the
Mhm.
time. I was outside of the wire about 5 days a week. I
Can
would
you
come back.
explain that? What's
Sure.
outside of the wire?
Sorry, that's a military phrase, and I should have been more friendly.
I want to hear that.
So, uh, my battalion built a combat outpost from the ground up, uh,
Okay.
relatively safely. Obviously, concertina wire and
Okay.
things that block bullets surrounded the compound. Uh,
Hmm.
but we also had that was for headquarters, but we had
Hmm.
three different rifle companies who occupied various spaces of the battlefield. And
Hmm.
so, what I would do 5 days a week as a part of this, I would find a space on a resupply train or a resupply convoy. It might be a
Hmm.
better description. My assistant and I, we would jump into one of the vehicles and go to all of the battle positions of this particular infantry company uh, Monday through Friday. So we would be bouncing back and forth these different battle positions that are in constant combat every single day.
Okay.
And
Wow.
we'll do that. So I would alternate between the three rifle companies, Monday through Friday, and then Friday I would catch a resupply uh, convoy and come back to the main operating area and do services there. So Monday through
Okay.
Friday, I was visiting the different battle positions constantly, out and about, um, and getting exposed to what the Marines were getting exposed to.
Wow.
Was in a few firefights, which is really interesting because as a chaplain, we're not because of the Geneva Convention, we're not allowed to carry a weapon.
Oh,
So
okay.
my
Okay.
assistant functions as not only as my assistant in when we're in a combat scenario, they function as your bodyguard. And then my commanding officer, God bless him, uh, he wanted to augment that. So usually everywhere I went, he would have three or four Marines with me as well, uh, because he did not want to lose his chaplain. And
No.
he great man. He's currently the commanding general for Second Marine Division at Camp Lejeune. Uh,
Really?
General Farrell Sullivan, great
Hmm.
man. Um,
Hmm.
but I saw a lot there, and uh, definitely things you can't unsee. Uh,
Yeah.
that's I do have diagnosed PTSD from that deployment. Um,
Hmm.
that tends to happen when somebody tries to kill you. Uh,
Right. It
but
does.
and then you know forward through moving through time, um, communicating, serving, loving on our folks and their families. And then came COVID. And
Okay.
then during COVID, um, in order to work in a hospital, you have to have what's called 4 units of clinical pastoral education.
Hmm.
And so the Navy has a CPE program both on the East Coast and the West Coast, and they partner with the VA on that.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
in 2020, I was selected to go to the CPE program that the Navy had in San Diego, and I was the uh, Naval Hospital San Diego, which is nicknamed Balboa. I was the ICU chaplain there at the height of COVID,
Oh,
so
you
we were
were.
we were losing at least a person a day in the
Oh
ICU
no.
to COVID, and sometimes, 1 month the wife would come in and pass, and sometimes the next month the husband came in and passed.
Oh
And then
no.
I'm
Oh
dealing
no.
I'm dealing with the adult children, uh, doing that, and also dealing with the medical providers who are just feeling at an absolute loss, who are feeling like failures. The
Yes.
COVID brought on a lot of moral injury for our medical providers who just felt so helpless in
Oh
that
right.
environment. And so that was the first residency that I did. The second residency I did with the VA in San Diego, and they sent me to what's called a PTSD domiciliary called the Aspire Center. And I wish the
Hmm.
VA, if you're anybody in the VA, please replicate this program. Um,
Okay.
what they do, what this particular facility does, was they take homeless veterans off the streets of San Diego who are in the VA. They get them clean. They address their PTSD and moral injury and other issues and help them stay clean. All while for 6 months they live at this facility. Then they help
Wow.
them
That's
find a job
wonderful.
and find housing, and they've got about an 85% success rate.
That is
And
spectacular.
it is. And the people there are just so dedicated to these veterans. And they just it's not about them, it's about making the veterans succeed. That's what's so beautiful about it. From the
Oh,
director on down, these folks are just phenomenal. And what I really enjoyed was they give the chaplain an equal seat at the table to everyone
oh,
else.
that's
So
good.
when we're talking about a plan for a particular resident, the chaplain is expected to address the spiritual portion, and that was just a wonderful experience. And to see over a period of 6 months the radical change that some of these folks have is just so inspiring. And
I'm
so
yeah.
as I was working there and finishing up my CPE, my thinking was, why are we waiting until these folks are homeless on the streets of San Diego to try to address some of these issues?
It's good.
So, as with anything in the military, if the military gives you an education, they want payback. So,
Yes.
my payback tour was to come to 29 Palms, California, in the middle of the Mojave Desert, which is a big Marine Corps training base. On this base, we will have approximately 50,000 Marines, sailors, and foreign military come through this base every year for training
Okay.
on uh, desert warfare and other types of warfare. Um, and uh, so as I came here, I decided that I wanted to try to do something that would help people stay in longer and not break a career.
Mm-hmm.
So, using a program that the VA developed called Building Spiritual Strength with the VA's permission, I kind of tweaked it for active duty.
Okay.
And I went to my leadership at the hospital and I said that same thing. Why are we waiting until these folks are homeless? If we could address some of these issues now, we could save some careers, we could save some marriages, we might could even save some lives.
Hmm.
And so, using that building spiritual strength, I partnered with a mental health provider at the hospital, and we started uh, doing that program. It's an 8-week course,
Okay.
and we started doing that, and it just had terrific effect. And then, as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, what about the local church?
Okay.
Does the local church really understand what moral injury is? The local pastor and the ministry leaders of the church, do they really understand what moral injury is? What does it look like in the congregation? And how can they be a part of of helping these people who think they are beyond forgiveness, beyond love, helping them to see that God still loves them and they are not beyond that forgiveness and that love of God, and that they can be restored um, to to a better life.
That's so good. Larry, you've started us with a definition of moral injury beyond forgiveness, beyond love. Sounds like it's part of it, but help our audience understand what you're meaning when you say moral injury, because obviously that is a key part of your book. It's a key part of this message.
Yes. So we all know, or most of us know, what PTSD is. That's when a
Right.
traumatic event happens to us. And it's so
Mm-hmm.
traumatic that it breaks us down emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically. What moral injury is kind of the opposite side of the coin. Moral injury is
Okay.
when we do something, sometimes under the direction of somebody in authority over us, or maybe we fail to prevent something, and that circumstance goes against everything we believe in. It goes against our morals, our ethics, especially our spiritual beliefs. And it breaks us to the point we are so consumed with guilt and shame that we no longer believe we're lovable or forgivable. You know,
Wow.
uh, guilt says I did something bad. Shame says I am bad. Moral injury says I'm not lovable or forgivable. And so I believe a lot of times in the church, we mistake this for something else. We may mistake it for
Okay.
back. We may mistake it for burnout. Uh, we may mistake it for somebody just being, off. Uh, and instead of coming alongside these individuals and sitting with them in the ashes, I think sometimes we just give them a quick scripture verse and a pat on the back and say, "You're good now." That's
Yeah.
not going to
No,
uh,
it's not.
not that scripture doesn't cut it. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't take that. But
No.
that there has to be more. We have to
Yeah.
sit alongside them in their pain and give them a safe place to be heard. Job's friends, after everything Job went through, Job's
Mm-hmm.
friends came and sat with him for 7 days before saying a word. And that was great.
Yes,
And then they opened their mouth and screwed it all up.
they did. But they started off good, didn't they? They just
They
sat with
started off
them.
great because that's what you do is you sit with someone in their pain, um, and then you don't try to explain everything away. Uh, but you sit with them in their pain, but you do help give them a safe place to express themselves, to say what's on their heart and mind, and help them to see that they're not unlovable and they're not unforgivable.
And one of the things that I've seen, Dr. Brant, is that we will we have so many people that are uncomfortable with grieving
Mm,
that they default to, here's a Bible verse or here's some Christian ease, when what is really needed is, just like you said, to just simply sit with them, let them cry, let them express. What do you see as, explain some of these first steps with someone that's got this deep moral injury? I'm not lovable, I'm not forgivable, I'm in this shame, I am bad. Tell us more about the steps that you've outlined in your book, and things that you've seen that are actually effective.
yeah, thank you for that. So the first thing is to sit with them, to
Hmm.
listen to what they have to say, no matter how long it takes them to say it. Uh, some people may just start talking about things right away. Some people may need you to sit with them for a while.
Hmm.
And some people might even test you with some things to see if you're going to talk about it. I found that especially true with police and military. They may test you with a couple things, find out if they hear about it from other sources. If they do, you're not trustworthy. If they don't, then they may come back and open up more to you. And uh, and that safe space is such a huge thing. And then
Mm.
to not react when they tell you the story.
Oh, yes.
When they tell you their story of pain, the worst thing we can do is, flinch, react with horror,
Be
uh,
aghast.
be aghast, be judgmental, or just as you said, try to fix it.
Yeah. Put a Band-Aid on a deep wound. It doesn't
Exactly.
work.
More than more times than I could count. You know, uh, I, I'm currently stationed with Marines, and more times than I can count, I've had a staff sergeant, a gunnery sergeant bring me a lance corporal PFC, and they'll literally drop them off my door and say, "Fix them, chaps," and
Oh
I'm just
boy.
like that.
Oh boy.
That's not what happens. But what I can do is give that Marine a safe place to tell me everything that's on their heart. And they
Yeah.
know that whatever they share with me is not going to go past the door of my office.
That's good.
Um, that safe space is just so critical. And then once you have that person's trust with that story of pain, then you can begin working with them and maybe sharing some stories of how, uh, for instance, people in scripture came back from from a big moral issue. Look at David.
Mhm.
David is an excellent example of someone with moral injury who, after the confrontation from Nathan, um, decided to turn back toward God instead of
Mhm.
away from him. And then in the New Testament, we have the story of Peter and the story of
Sure.
Paul, who were
That's
both
true.
confronted by Jesus. And then when they were confronted, given that implied forgiveness, God then gave them a purpose and a mission. And I think with these people, forgiveness, they understand the concept of forgiveness, but so many times they don't feel like they're worthy. And
Right.
so sometimes they might need something else. It may be a
Mhm.
particular ritual that might seem like a rite of passage.
Mhm.
It may be a mission, a job that they need to do,
Mhm.
not to earn their salvation, never, never, never,
Right.
but for God to work through them to help them see that they're not unlovable and unforgivable anymore. Um, some things that I've done in working with people is I may have them rewrite Psalm 51 using examples from their own life and spiritual journey.
I like that.
Another thing that comes straight out of the Building Spiritual Strength uh, uh, course that we do is something called a two-way prayer journal, because
Hmm.
these folks, they're so focused on themselves because of what they did. They pretty much have blinders on,
Hmm.
because all they see is their own grief and shame. So what we will do is we'll say, because in this course we have homework every single week, and I've done this in my personal counseling as well. I'll say, I want you to start for me a two-way prayer log,
Hmm.
and they're like, two-way prayer log, okay? And I said, here's what you do. For the first part, it's like a normal journal, normal prayer log. You write out your prayer to God.
Okay.
And then when you're finished with that, answer the prayer from God's perspective.
Hmm.
How would God answer that prayer?
Mhm.
With everything you know about God, His holiness,
Sure.
His righteousness, His love, answer that prayer from His perspective. You're not playing God, but the goal
Right.
here is to help you see God's perspective. And this helps the individual kind of move away from seeing things with blinders and to begin to look at things from God's perspective. And
I love that.
it helps get them out of themselves. And it's
You
amazing.
know, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's amazing as we meet week to week, these individuals saying, we'll say, what has God told you in your two-way prayer logs today? And they'll read excerpts from that part of where they wrote down how they believe God would have answered that prayer. And it's amazing how much that aligns directly with scripture at a God who is holy, who is righteous, who is loving. and how much that helps draw them back from that abyss.
That is so good. That is so good. One of the things, Larry, when I've sat with someone in this pain with this moral injury, like you said, shame, maybe unforgivable, etc., I have, at times we'll go back to that scene. Like for Peter, it's like Jesus had the fire of coals in John 21. He's like taking him back and he's asking him three times and all that. We'll go back there and I will just ask, how do you feel towards, that man there? And a lot of times when they're really honest, you know how that goes. It'll be like, well, I'm ashamed of him, or he should have done this, or he should have done that, etc. It's a very common thing, and once we've sat with them, we've done grieving, we've opened it up and paid it the respect it deserves. We get back there and say, would you be willing to forgive him? Because you're holding him judgment today, right? Would you forgive him for A, B, or C? And we have to wrestle with that a lot of times. But there's that judgment against yourself, and you're not reconciled with yourself. And sometimes one of the things I've found that helps is, okay, if that was your baby brother or one of your soldiers that you work with, would you hate him the same way, or would you forgive him? I
That is
mean,
awesome.
these things to work through, because the shame is so powerful. I tell people shame is really synonymous with condemnation. And if you're
Yeah,
living under that shame, you are living under condemnation every day, aren't you?
yes, very much. Another thing that is helpful for me,
Okay.
straight out of the Old Testament, is Numbers 31.
Oh.
And so you've got uh, Israel going out to fight the Midianites.
Mm-hmm.
And God says, go fight the Midianites, kill them for what they did to you, because the Midianites employed Balaam trying to curse, and then what Balaam said was the best way you can bring down Israel is to use your women to sexually entice them to turn away from
Mm.
God. Um, and then God orders Israel, take out Midian. You've got to take
Yeah.
them out.
Yeah.
Um, and so they come back from the battle of defeating Midian, and Moses stops them outside of the camp and says, stop. At this point, you need to stay outside of the camp for 7 days.
Hmm.
In these next 7 days, you're going to examine what you have done, reflect on it, and twice, not once, but twice, rededicate yourself to God. And then everything you're bringing back, whether it's what you wore in the battle or something you captured or a person you captured, has to then pass through either the fire or the water. And that in itself must be dedicated to God.
Wow.
And so we see that even under something that God ordered,
Mm-hmm.
we still recognize that war is a messy business and that there has to be a meditation and a rededication back to God after going through something like that. I think that's something that we as a civilization, as a culture, have missed out on.
That's something that I mean, I've been a Christian for 50 years. I've never heard that insight into coming out of something traumatic, even like you said, doing what God told you to do.
Hmm.
But here God is saying, "Hey, I understand what you've just went through." And and honestly, I suppose we could interpolate and say, I understand there's a moral injury here. Here's a way through that.
Exactly. And you're not unlovable, you're not unforgivable because you had to kill people made in the image of God. But
Hmm.
what you do need to do is recognize this is messy. you do
Yes.
need to recognize, think about what has happened and rededicate yourself back to God and really everything you have as well. That was the purpose of having through every, the weapons had to pass through the fire,
Hmm.
the armor, any loot or any captured people had to pass through water
Okay.
and they themselves be dedicated to God.
Hmm.
And so it's a recognition of what had to happen, as messy as it was, but also that afterward, God must be recognized, God must be dedicated to, in order to be able to rejoin society. And see, what we've been doing is, speaking as someone for myself, one day I was in the battlefield with bullets flying by. The
Hmm.
next day, I'm on a plane back to the United States.
Oh, right.
And it's just surreal. Uh, and we get back, and I remember calling a family member, and uh, my this family member said, "Well, you don't sound like you have PTSD," and I was like,
Wow.
you know, at that point in time, I didn't realize I had it. I do now,
Sure.
uh, but
Larry, I can imagine you're like, I didn't know you were an expert in PTSD.
oh, let me tell you, I so wanted to say that back to that.
Yes, yes.
But I thought, this is someone that you love dearly. You don't want your first conversation back from combat to get into a fight with a family member.
No, no,
So,
you
and
don't.
plus,
You absolutely don't.
so many people who have never put on a uniform, they just don't understand everything that goes into it.
Yeah,
Um, and I didn't before I put on the uniform.
sure.
I remember now, so much of my dad, um, who was involved in the Battle of the Bulge in World War II.
Was he?
Uh,
Wow.
and he was the only survivor of his tank. He was a machine gunner in a Sherman tank, and he was the only one
Wow.
who survived. And his back was one big burn scar from the tank
Whoa.
catching fire after it caught a direct hit. Um, so many of my dad's actions and things now make sense to me.
Mm, bet they do.
I
I'll
I
bet they do.
I just wish I could talk to him now. He passed back in '95, so.
Yeah, I wish you could too. I had a veteran of Vietnam come in years ago, probably 15 years ago, and he told me, he said, Mark, I haven't slept through the night peacefully since I came back from my second, I think it was his second tour of Vietnam.
Mhm.
And we spent the next 3 days, better part of 3 days, or, probably 18 to 20 hours, I'm guessing, working on this absolutely the moral injury, the PTSD, the trauma. And we got just kind of breakthrough after breakthrough. I mean, it was difficult to hear some of those stories. It was it
Oh,
was hard. It
yeah,
was hard. I still
absolutely.
remember them today. But he came back the next week and he said, "Mark, for the first time since 1973, I slept through the night without nightmares or night sweats."
Mhm.
And I was like, I guess the proof is in the pudding. You have got a breakthrough. But
Definitely.
it's a real deal.
It is. It is a real deal. I'm thinking of
Tell us
one.
about, yeah, no, go
Nope.
ahead. Tell us a story. I'd love to hear a story.
Well, we had one gentleman come through uh, our program here, and
Mhm.
it uh, it had been really close to 20 years since he deployed. He
Okay.
was a retired civilian on base, but
Okay.
he asked if he could go through our program, and we said yes. Um, and it was interesting. The first night he came in, he was rough, gruff, frowned,
Mhm.
frumpy, any of those adjectives. He came
Right.
in. Um, And so, we had the group there, and each group kind of, shared their story a little bit. That first night, everybody's very guarded. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then, but even in that first session, he started to realize I'm not alone in how I'm feeling.
Wow.
And then over the course of the next 8 weeks, as we go through the material, as we do the homework assignments, because I give homework, um,
Mm-hmm.
what the coolest thing was, the second week, he came back and said, I took I I I took the workbook you guys gave us, and I took it to my VA counselor, and she's now structuring our counseling sessions to match the workbook for the next 7 weeks, which I thought was
That's
pure genius.
wonderful.
Pure genius
That's
on the
genius.
counselor's
That's
part.
genius.
I just
Yes.
I thought that was amazing. Um, and then every week, his demeanor began to change a little bit
Mm.
more, a little bit more. And as we came to learn, he had been keeping his wife and his children, and this is typical of moral injury, he had been
Yes.
keeping them at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole reason was, and he said this one night, I do not want to infect them with my evil.
Yes. Yes. People don't understand that.
And then on the last week we were there, uh, with tears in his eyes, he said, I've made a decision. I have decided I'm going to share everything with my wife.
Whoa.
And he
That's
he he had
beautiful.
stated he had been terrified to do so because he was afraid he was afraid that she would then begin to see him the way he sees himself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that she would leave him, and the same
Yes.
for his children. And that thought absolutely terrified him. But through what we worked through, uh, he finally realized I cannot continue to live like this. And so he made the commitment to do that. And I remember we all, we did the group hug thing, and then we did the group prayer thing, um, and prayed for him. Um, and then I didn't see, because that was the last night. And other than the follow up that I did 4 weeks later, which was more or less just touching base. But about 6 months later, I saw him, and I saw him a month ago. Um, he had lost weight.
Wow.
He went from being Mr. Frumpy to being jovial, laughing. Some of his coworkers came up to me and said, "What did you do? It's like you replaced him with a different person." Um,
That's
Instead of
great.
being the guy in the workplace everybody avoided, he's now laughing and cutting up with everybody. And I got to see him, and I pulled him aside and I said, what happened when you talked to your wife?" And he said, "Well, I did exactly as I promised. I went home. I said, honey, we need to talk," which terrified her. But then he proceeded to tell her everything that happened on his deployments. And he was, you know, honestly terrified that she would see him as he saw himself. And
Hmm.
instead, she embraced him, and she said, "There's absolutely nothing to forgive. I love you. Um, Thank you for trusting me with this. This just brings us even closer."
So beautiful.
And it is. And then he did a modified version for his children, because
Oh, he
there are
did. Okay,
there's,
good.
and the same thing the same thing happened there. Uh, and so his relationship with his wife and his children were restored.
That
And
that isn't that the way it's supposed to be?
oh yeah, and when I saw him last month, he's lost a good 50 pounds
Oh,
because
good for him.
he's not eating, you know, his stress.
Yes. Yeah,
And
and he's not carrying his shame anymore.
correct. He has shared it and then let go of it.
Yes. And it reminds me, Larry, of this verse in James 5:16, confess your faults one to another and pray one for another that you may be healed. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. And that word fault, it means a lapse or a deviation from truth and uprightness. Of course, it can be a sin, but it
Mhm.
can be just you're off the track. And so
Right.
much of what we're talking about is this shame and this condemnation where you believe this lie and you live with this lie around your neck that I am bad or unredeemable.
Mhm.
Once it begins to come into the light and you've got some people around you that are caring about you and trying to help you lead you toward the truth, right? Now everything can change.
Yes. And you combine that verse from James with 1 Peter 5:7, cast your cares upon me, for I care for you. Man,
Yes.
that is, you take it to God and then you take it to some trusted individuals. And that 1-2 effect is huge in bringing these people back and restoring them.
That's so good, Larry. And if we back up from 1 Peter 5:7, it says, and this is a hard one, humble yourself and
Mm,
cast your care on him. It is
yes.
humbling to come confess and say, I need help. I'm the tough veteran or the tough soldier, and they are tough as nails, but they need help too. So when they
Yeah.
humble themselves and say, please help me, now they can cast their cares. Now they can start bringing this truth out. And when we have someone to, like you said, to sit with them, and to listen to them, and then over time help them get this revelation of this truth. Jesus said, "You will know the truth. You will know it in your heart, and the truth will set you free." They
Amen.
come in with lies, they come in with shame, but as they get that revelation of truth, they gradually things begin to shift, don't they?
Yeah. And one thing that I'll share with
Mhm.
whether I'm counseling privately or counseling or a part of this group we lead, um, I will share that a lot of people misunderstand the concept of forgiveness.
Okay.
Many people think forgiveness is a light switch,
Yes.
boom, you're forgiven. Whereas in reality, forgiveness is a process. It's something
Yes.
you have to work through. And it,
Mhm.
depending on the circumstance, depending on the sin, depending on the decision, it may take a while to work through it.
Yes.
And
That's a good word.
what's key is progress.
Yes. Yeah, somebody said a long time ago, God's not as interested in your perfection as he is your direction.
Mhm.
Just keep taking step forward. Just keep making progress. Um, well, this is wonderful. And your new book has just come out. I just looked it up on Amazon. We can buy it now in Kindle, in hardcover or paperback. So that's exciting. Um, any kind of final words to tell us a little about? I'm sure a lot of the things that you've covered today, Dr. Brant, are in this book, right?
Yes, most definitely. The first chapter is what is moral injury and why should the church care?
Okay.
And then the second chapter is examples of what moral injury may look like in different life circumstances. And then I examine a theology of moral injury, uh, using theology and scripture on how to shed light on this, and just moving forward from there. And even to the point of in there in the eighth chapter, I've got two different workshops that the church could put on themselves. You don't have to hire me to come in. It's
Sure.
through reading this, you could do a 90-minute one or a half day one to educate your ministry leaders and your people on what moral injury is, how to be a safe place for people, how to listen for key phrases that people with
Mm-hmm.
moral injury may use, and how to respond in a safe way for those individuals. And then what moving forward um, for a church having a care ministry like that could look like.
That is wonderful. I'm so glad you've got those resources available. The book is Restoring the Broken, a ministry leader's guide to understanding and healing moral injury. And I'm sure so many of our listeners didn't understand this concept of moral injury, but now there's a great revelation. Dr. Brant, thank you so much for being on. I would love to have you on again and talk about rest and Sabbath and some more things about restoring our soul.
I would love that as well.
So good to have you, Dr. Larry Brant. They call him Chaps. And it'll be 17 years this summer that he's been as a Navy chaplain. So glad to have you. Any final words? We so appreciate you coming on today.
Just that if moral injury describes you, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
describes someone you know, there there you don't have to sit in that guilt and shame. There is a path back to God where you can feel human again.
That's wonderful. And I'm going to go study Numbers 31 after you told me about that. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please do us a favor and like, subscribe, and share with others who might need it. And you can find additional resources at SamaritansWell.com.